Awesome.
Good evening. I'm Dan Wathen, chairman of the commission appointed to investigate the Lewiston tragedy. And we will begin as usual with an introduction of the commission members who are here, and we're all here this evening. So starting off with Justice Gorman.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Gorman. I'm a former member of the Supreme Judicial Court.
Good evening. I'm Toby Dilworth. I'm a former assistant U.S. attorney from the District of Maine, and I practice law in Portland.
Good evening. I'm Paula Silsby. I'm a former federal prosecutor.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Rushlow. I'm a former district attorney and a retired district court judge.
And I'm Dr. Deborah Bader. I'm a retired forensic psychologist.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Anthony Ng. I'm a psychiatrist up here in Bangor, Maine.
And our staff, beginning with Ann.
Good evening. I'm Ann Jordan. I'm the executive director.
I'm Brian McMaster, an investigator for the commission, retired chief of investigations for the attorney general.
And I'm Jim Osterreiter. I'm a retired FBI agent and on staff as an investigator for the commission.
We have convened this evening for the purpose of interviewing and hearing from Major Matthew Dickson, who I believe is with us, hopefully. There you are, Major. Thank you very much for being here. I understand we're operating under a 12-hour difference in time, so I'm not sure what time it is in your world, but...
It's 06, yeah.
Okay, so you're at the beginning of the day and we're at the end of one, so.
Correct, yes.
Okay, we're pleased to have you here, and to begin, would you just raise your right hand and I will administer the oath to you. You swear that the testimony you will give in the matter now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Let me just make a couple of preliminary announcements and then we'll turn it over to those who will have questions for you. This evening, because of the schedule, we were unable to arrange with the Pine Tree Society for simultaneous ASL interpretation. We do have closed caption, and the Pine Tree Society will add the ASL interpretation to the tape of this, and it will be posted tomorrow. So that will be a slight delay. We apologize for that, but that we weren't able to avoid it. So I believe that we're ready to begin. And Dr. Ng, I believe you have some questions to begin with, and then we'll proceed with others.
Hi, good morning, good evening, Major Dickinson. Thank you so much for your time and appreciate it. So, as Chair Wathen saying, I'll start off the inquiry, and then Mr. Toby Dilworth is going to come in some additional questions, and then we open up to the panel members as well. And if there's now, first of all, do you have a copy of the records for you to reference in case you need it?
Exhibits, yes, I do, sir.
You do, okay, good. And also, I have it up on my computer on your my left hand side. So if you see me glancing to my left, I'm looking at the records. So this is one. So explain myself. So first of all, can you first state your full name again?
It's Matthew Dickson.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and can you tell me your training and your background?
Yeah, I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner, master's level. And I've been practicing for roughly 12 years. Mm-hmm. And I've been commissioned as an officer for roughly about the same time.
Okay, so around 12 years of commission, okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me what was your role at the Keller Hospital around July of 2023?
Yes, sir. I was on active duty at West Point at Keller Army Community Hospital for 120 days, 4 months, providing backfill, which basically is I was a transitional provider with the chief was leaving, and then there was another psychiatrist coming in, so they needed someone to cover. So that was me.
So what would you be doing at Keller Hospital at the time? What are some of your duties?
Yeah, so my primary duty was providing medication management, predominantly medication management. I was also doing psychiatric evaluations, command directive evaluations, and I was also seeing dependents and service members from all branches, because Keller is a MTF on it's a pretty busy place. So
Okay. So
that,
you
and
were
also coverage. I was also on call at the hospital for the emergency department.
So what the emergency room would do is basically they'll call you if there's a psychiatric patients or psychiatric issues, and you go over and see.
Correct. It's a rotational thing. I was on call for two weeks out of
Okay.
the 4 months that I was there. So yes.
Okay. Do you remember why you were asked to see Mr. Card in July?
Yes, I was called by the emergency physician who was on duty, and he called me and said that there had been a soldier that had been brought in that was exhibiting psychosis and paranoia, and that he needed to be assessed.
Okay. And the process there at Keller, usually attending emergency room doc or somebody would see the patient first before they call you.
Correct, sir.
So you'll be the second point of contact after they make whatever assessment they need to do and medical stuff. Okay. All right. And if you need to refer, feel free to do that. What finding?
No.
Huh? Sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
No, absolutely no.
Okay.
I'm fine, sir. Yeah.
So what findings did you have from your assessment, Mr. Card, at the time?
Okay. So yeah, my findings, as far as findings, yes, Mr. Card, after my assessment was completed, Mr. Card was exhibiting psychosis and paranoia. And I actually had safety concerns because he was actually assigned with his unit running a range where he had access to weapons and munitions.
Okay.
So that's when I made the decision. And my recommendation was that he be moved to a higher level of care for further assessment.
Okay. And Major, just so you know, we do have records, so we actually know a little bit what you did, but we want to, because there's a public hearing, we want to be sure that everyone's.
No, absolutely. So I know. Yeah. I mean, I know it's all in the chart. Pretty much, sir.
So, and a couple of key points I want in your assessment. I noticed that you had identified he had abnormal and he was abnormal, impulsive, normal behavior, impulsive, and his cognition and perception were impaired. Can you elaborate a little bit more how you came to those conclusions? What did you, how did he present himself? What did he tell you, that kind of thing that made you came to those conclusions?
Okay, so I only saw him for a brief period of time.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, he denied. I mean, basically, he presented. I mean, he was definitely somewhat guarded, and but he did present, noting that he wasn't going to hurt anybody. It denied any harm to himself or others at the time, but he became somewhat, just as far as my recollection, and this is also in the chart, a little bit more agitated, I guess you could say, towards the end of the interview. And when it became, his paranoia was somewhat escalated. And that's when I'd said, okay, at that time, that there were some safety concerns as far as his behavior regarding just members of his unit. So yes.
So the increasing agitation, paranoia, was it directed at you or directed at the content?
No, it wasn't directed. It wasn't directed at me. It was directed more so. And this is also in the chart too. Yeah. The fact that he was basically very paranoid that people had been talking about him and that people were like saying that he, quote unquote, was a pedophile and a homosexual. And if people didn't stop this, that something was going to happen. So that was kind of like where I realized that there were some safety concerns. Yep. And as for my job at that moment in time, I'm like, okay, he's obviously not fit for duty, and he needs further assessment.
Okay. Did he explain to you what he would have done if he, because you mentioned if he didn't stop, he may have to do something. Did he tell you
He
what he
did,
would do?
he kind of elaborated, and there was nothing real specific in regards to like, I'm gonna go do something terrible. But at that moment in time, I'm just, I was just, I'm all about it's safety,
Yep.
safety. And that's what I made. That's what I made the recommendation that he go to a higher level of care.
Okay. And based on your assessment at the time,
Yes, sir.
did you have understanding of Mr. Card's ability to understand what's going on with him, his insight into his situation, based on the assessment at the time?
At the time,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, can you?
So, I mean, like, as part of mental status, we often describe, someone's insight into.
Well, I mean, at the time, I mean,
Yeah.
other than the fact that there was definitely the psychosis and the paranoia, he went willing. I mean, I did not have to actually have him, my recommendation was for him to be assessed at a higher level of care, but I did not have to actually go through the process of like a PEC or something along those lines, sir. Because he actually went willingly. He followed the recommendation and had no problems when I explained to him what was going to happen.
So explain to me, when a patient is at Keller that you assess, and if they didn't want to go to hospital, do you have, even if, let's say, the command directive, do you have to do what they call, do you have to follow the New York State PC laws, or do you have a separate
no, it's
process to do?
It's pretty much the same thing. I mean, for me, in regards to my scope, I know some people that say to me, like, what's the difference between like what you do and as being a psychiatrist? Obviously, I'm a nurse practitioner and my specialty is psychiatry. That's one piece. For me to actually have somebody committed, I need to have like either a physician, psychiatrist actually sign off on the paperwork.
So that would be a physician at Keller.
Yeah, it could be a psychiatrist. It could be like the emergency physician who was on duty. He would have at that time. I mean, he was in agreement with the plan of the soldier going for assessment in a higher level of care, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess the question I was asking, if let's say if the person didn't want to go to hospital,
right?
Do you say to that person, hey, you have to go because it's command directive, or do you have to follow the New York State laws that say you got to, what they call PC or involuntary, you send someone to hospital?
Right. My understanding would be that you would follow because I mean, there's being a soldier, you can be ordered. I mean, there's the thing where he could be ordered to go to the hospital. But in the particular case at hand, just off the top of my head, that I was under the understanding that if he wasn't going to go, that he would be committed. He would be committed, and paperwork would have been filled. Appropriate.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's good. Yeah. Thanks for telling me. How you mentioned you're concerned about his risk. How, from what you remember, how did you? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of some of that already in terms of him working on a range. How did you determine his risk levels to a point where you say, "I'm concerned. I need to send him to the hospital"?
Right. When he started to towards the end of my assessment, when he started to get somewhat agitated, and he basically there was that it's just an underlying, like, if and it's in the chart, if those if they don't stop bothering me, I'm gonna, I don't, it's he didn't elaborate specifically, but that worried me, especially with his role. And I did, and just from some corroboration with his unit, with some of the other people that I had spoken with before I even interviewed him, I mean, my understanding was he was in charge of running a grenades range at the academy. So I was very, very concerned about this.
Okay.
So that's when I said, okay, he needs to be further assessed.
Okay.
And yeah.
And based on your assessment at the time, you felt it was more a primary psychiatric thing than actually a medically organic based presentation, right? That you
from just in that moment in time.
Okay.
I don't know, I didn't look, I didn't look at any blood, I just basically, I sat with him for probably about anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. And yeah, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you sent him to Four Winds, which I presume is the area closer hospital that's closest to you guys at Keller.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my understanding. That was my understanding at the time. That was what was told to me by the attending. Yeah.
And did you feel options for less restrictive disposition was possible with him, or based on, or you were concerned with risk level that you really couldn't do a lower level care?
At that time, because of the fact of what he was doing in regards to his job and just the idea of safety and having access to weapons, munitions, I did not feel that he wasn't fit for duty, and that he needed further assessment.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And on your form, whoops, it's like on exhibit 10. B, I think.
Yes, sir.
You had checked a whole bunch of recommendations. I think the second page or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And explain to me and the commission members. So, what is your understanding of how that would be carried out in the sense of like, is there a difference between a reserve unit or active duty unit kind of thing like that? Because is that form just for everybody who comes
well,
through?
I mean, the soldier was on active duty, but he's a reservist.
Okay.
So and unfortunately, when you're no longer on active duty, it's kind of like that you're still part of the army. I'm a drilling and reservist myself. So but yeah, so there's definitely, so there's a different, so you're asking me like the difference between like if the soldier in question was like an active duty soldier versus reservist. Sir, I'm just want to clarify.
Yeah, so basically those recommendations you put in there.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing right, it means like they could really only implement those while he was on duty. When he's not on duty, those can't be applied because he doesn't follow under anybody at the time, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you mentioned one of his one of the recommendations was that he should follow up with case management and brigade medical officer, and one of the statements you made. Do you have any role in that setting up that follow-up, or the hospital does it?
No, I mean, those are my recommendations. I mean, I was, for the time that I assessed the soldier, and I did do follow-up. I mean, you could see in the chart where I actually did an addendum. Because I just wanted to make sure that as a behavioral health officer, I wanted to make sure that, his chain of command, and that's when I had the conversation with his commander, Captain Reamer.
Okay.
And
what was the
document? What's that, sir?
And that conversation was to what? Remind him of the follow-up? What did you find, or what was it?
Yeah, no, that was to remind him that, because I wanted to make sure that, as you can see, and I put that in the chart, that I conducted and finished the 3822, which is that document the command directed, and he hadn't grabbed it. I put it in a safe box. It's a place where we put like a document where someone has to go and grab it. So I had to actually make sure that he physically picked up that document and that he was clear on my recommendations. And I just yes, sir.
I mean, your interaction with him, did you feel that he understood? Well, like it's just so basically, you handed him the recommendations, and you know he received it because you gave it to him, right?
Correct.
Okay, and also lastly,
I also had a conversation with him. I also
You
had a
did.
conversation with
okay,
him on
and
the
that
phone.
reinforced what you did. Okay,
Correct,
and
correct. Sir.
while he was at sorry, not Keller, Four Winds, and then also subsequently,
Mhm.
did anyone contact you about his care at all, to coordinate care or find out what happened, anything?
All I know is we have a case management
Mhm.
nurse that I know was kind of doing some follow-up with him,
Mhm.
but nobody was following up with me, regarding his care, and I was unaware of anything that was really going on.
Okay.
The only thing I was aware of is what was when he was actually going to be discharged from the hospital. And that's when I kind of like that's when I had that conversation with Captain Reamer
Okay.
regarding my recommendations.
How
Or
did you
my
find out he
initial.
was being? How did you find out he was being discharged?
I found out he was being discharged from the case management. We had a case management nurse. She's the documents that you have in there where her follow-up
Yep.
conversations that she had with Four Winds.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that case management is with the Army, was
Correct.
okay, all right, and she was the point of contact, so to speak, during his
Right.
stay there.
Correct.
If
Correct, sir.
anything, okay, and the only thing you had was at the end when she told you he was leaving and things like
Mhm.
that. Okay, and she didn't tell you anything about follow up or anything other than what you
No.
told Captain Reamer. Okay,
Captain Reamer.
all right. That's it for me. Toby, you have any questions you want to?
Thank you. Thank you, Major Dickson. Let me go back to your training and experience. Can you just
Mhm.
describe, in a summary fashion, your education after high school?
My summary. Okay, education after high school. Okay, so after I graduated from high school, I attended college. I actually have a bachelor's degree. My first bachelor's degree is in English, and so I didn't go into nursing until later on. This is kind of like a second evolution for me until I was in my late 30s. But I have a bachelor's degree in English, and went back to school in my late 30s, and went into it became a nurse practitioner, and with my concentration and expertise in psychiatry,
And you were a
which is what
civilian
I've
when
been
you,
working. What's that, sir?
were you a civilian when you went back to school the
When I
second
went
time?
back to school, yeah, I actually, well, I'll give you some. I mean, you want to know some of the background. So I graduated from high school. I went to college and graduated with a degree in English, and I actually enlisted in the Army. So I'm prior enlisted. So I was in the infantry for 4.5 years, and so that kind of like I kind of like was active duty when I was in my 20s, got out, had a 16-year separation from the military, and when I was in graduate school, found out that I had an opportunity to come back and serve. So that's kind of like, yeah.
And what did you do during those 16 years?
Yeah, so I worked in as a project manager. I worked in different facets in the community. I worked in nonprofit for the American Red Cross. I worked in project management for a high-end office furniture company. I worked in financial services for a few years. I dabbled a little bit in stuff, trying to figure out where I wanted to land, and then. Actually, believe it or not, everything kind of resonated back to my time when I was an enlisted soldier on active duty for 4.5 years. I was actually stationed in Washington, D.C. So it had some experience, had some procedures and things done to me on the medical side, and thought, hey, this is kind of a neat thing. And then, having the opportunity to go back to school and actually pursue some of that, and actually being able to serve too.
And so you've been a nurse practitioner in the Army for 16 years?
No, I've been a nurse practitioner in the Army for 12 years, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you start at Keller? How long had you been at Keller?
Yeah, so I started at Keller in May, I believe it was like around May 15th of last year. And I was at Keller Army Community Hospital from May 15th through September 11th.
Okay. And do you recall how big Keller is? About how many beds are there at Keller?
Keller's not that big. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not very big.
You mentioned that the behavioral health department is pretty busy, though.
Yes.
How many-
It's Keller for military treatment facilities, which is an MTF. Keller is very big because of its location in the Hudson River Valley, and kind of like, you know, you've got it's kind of because of its location, for service members, and not just the Army, but for the Navy, the Marines, Air Force, you know, anything that people are receiving, are looking to get care. Keller is a pretty significant focal point.
Okay. And approximately what percentage of the patients you saw were reservists?
Reservists?
Yes.
I can't really speculate on that, sir. So, but I did see reservists. I did see reservists that were mostly coming off of like active duty or a deployment overseas. So I don't know exactly the number in regards to percentages, but I did see reservists.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of your meeting with Robert Card on July 16th of last year, you think it
Yes,
lasted
sir.
about 45 minutes to an hour?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And you understood that that was a command-directed examination?
Correct.
Okay. So his commanding officer directed him to go to Keller.
Correct.
Okay. And do you recall who was with him in the emergency department?
Yeah, so he actually, I don't know the specific, I know that I had spoken to multiple members of his unit, including his commander, Captain Reamer, in the emergency department. Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned the chart, and are you referring specifically to the narrative which we've marked as Exhibit 10D?
Hold on, let me pull that up here, sir, while you're okay. So 10D. You said it's 10D. I'm scrolling through right now, sir. Hold on. Okay. You said 10D?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going there. 10C. E, where's the D? Okay. You said 10D. D is in David?
D is in David.
D is in David. Okay, here we go. That is correct.
Okay. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Yes, sir.
What did you talk to him at all during this evaluation about firearms in his house?
He did disclose, I believe, that he did have firearms in his home. I didn't get into specifics, but I did know he did disclose that he had access to weapons. Yes.
And explain to me what your concern about that was.
My concern?
Yeah, I mean,
because he was presenting to me with a
Oh, no.
paranoid and psychotic behavior.
Okay. Was it anything he specifically said that concerned you, or was it the fact that he was exhibiting these symptoms and he had guns?
Exhibiting these symptoms, and also just, after, going through the assessment and getting some history, knowing per his report that he had access to weapons.
Okay. But he didn't say he was thinking of shooting anybody.
No, nothing like that was said to me.
Okay. Now, the references in the record to your recommendation that they invoke the SAFE Act, correct?
Correct. So here's the thing with the SAFE Act. He was in New York, so he was not a resident of New York. So instituting the SAFE Act, he was put on a profile, so I put him on a profile, no weapons, no range, and then that's when I also, with my last discussion, mentioned that I have followed up with his commander to make sure that that weapons were going to be removed.
Okay, and what's your understanding of the SAFE Act?
My understanding of the SAFE Act is, that if per whatever state you're in, I know it's different from different states. That they will go and that they'll per the recommendation, if there's a safety, if there's safety concerns, remove any firearms or weapons.
Okay, so if he had been a New York resident, what would have happened?
My understanding is, that if he was a New York resident, that there would have something would have been put in place. I don't know all the specifics, but then weapons would have been removed, sir.
Okay.
No.
And you might have to file or submit an affidavit or testify in that.
I believe so. There was a website. There's a website that you go to.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, let me go to Exhibit 10B. If you could pull that up.
10D.
B as in boy.
B as in boy. Okay.
This is one of the documents you talked to Dr. Ng about, I believe.
Okay. I'm going there. Hold on. Okay, so 10B. Yep, that's the 3822, sir. Yes.
Yeah, that's the form 3822, and it's entitled Report of Mental Status Evaluation, correct?
Correct.
And did you fill this out?
I did.
What's the purpose of this form?
It's a form for the command directive evaluation. It's a form that you fill out and that you provide to the commander after the evaluation is complete.
Do you fill it out for every command directed evaluation?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Do you fill it out for other evaluations as well?
No. This is a specific form for a command directed evaluation.
And how often did you fill these out at Keller?
I did a few command directed evaluations when I was at Keller. I don't know off the top of my head, but I did. That's one of the things, because Keller, because of its location and being, let me put it this way, for a military treatment for New England. So you think of where Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, pretty much if a command directive evaluation is going to be given for a soldier or an airman or somebody in the air, any of the branches, they would end up going to they would come to Keller.
Okay, so just rough estimate, one a week, once every other week?
It was I was providing, and that wasn't just me. There were other providers, a couple of clinical psychologists that I was working with. I I don't know on average, sir, but I did a few command directed evaluations during the 4 months that I was at Keller.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you done them at other facilities as well?
No. I had never done command directives. It's within my scope of what I do, but other than doing them at Keller, I had not done any.
Okay. In the second section, which is entitled Behavioral Health Disposition Determination,
Mhm.
about 5 blocks down, the block is checked off for service member currently does not meet medical retention standards, has reached medical retention determination point, and a disability evaluation system referral is indicated.
Right.
What does that mean?
Okay. So service member does not currently meet medical retention standards. So basically, being fit for duty. So it's kind of like what I was just telling the previous person who was talking to me before, that he, because of the behavior that was being exhibited at that moment in time when I saw the soldier, that he didn't meet retention standards, because you can't have display psychosis and extreme paranoia and be fit for duty. So yeah, and then medical retention and disability indicated, or yeah, so further assessment. So at that time, that was like my determination that a higher level of care and further assessment needed to be conducted on the soldier.
So does that mean it's your recommendation that he be discharged from the Army, or that
No, I mean, I basically recommended that due to what was being presented to me at that moment in time, that's why I wanted him to be further assessed, that he wasn't fit for duty. No, yes.
But that finding is as to that day. It doesn't mean that
Correct.
it's 6
What
months.
I'm reporting to you is my findings from the assessment and that moment in time for that 45 minutes to an hour that I spent with that soldier.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in fact, the next box is checked. Further assessment is needed to determine behavioral health medical readiness status. And
Correct.
right. And that's why you referred him to Four Winds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in the next block, section 3, pertinent findings and mental health status evaluation.
Mhm.
It reflects the screenings that you performed.
Correct.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, traumatic brain injury, substance misuse, and sexual trauma, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you made some evaluations
Mhm.
on his cognition, for example. You said it was impaired. Do you recall why you concluded that his cognition was impaired?
Just because of the fact of how he was presenting, sir, with his paranoia and also the psychosis.
And his behavior you marked as abnormal for the same reason?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And then perceptions impaired, impulsivity abnormal.
Mhm.
Again, same reasons.
Yes, sir.
Now, you said you concluded that his behavioral health risk for harm to himself was low.
Mhm.
He didn't have any suicidal ideation.
Correct. No denied suicidal or homicidal ideations.
Okay. And then in terms of harm to others, you thought that was low as well.
Mhm.
Why did you conclude that, given the
Just per
reason?
report, sir.
What do you mean per report?
Or when I asked him, are you going to harm yourself, or are you going to harm other people? Are you having thoughts? And he said no. He denied that.
So it's based on his statement, not on, you didn't make an evaluation as to what you
It's
thought.
based on, yeah.
Okay. Did you ever draw a conclusion or predict as to what kind of risk he posed to others?
At the time, I knew that just because of the because of the paranoia and because of the psychosis that was presenting, and some of the agitation that I also mentioned earlier, that there was just some safety concerns in the back of my head, and that's when I said, okay, this he needs to be assessed and moved to a higher level of care.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the positive screens, findings and elevated risks, you say that during the interview and report, service member positive for auditory hallucinations and paranoia.
Yes.
Was there anything else other than we've discussed before that drew you to that conclusion?
No, nothing else, sir.
Okay. And your diagnosis was unspecified psychosis not due to substance or physiological condition, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of follow-up recommendations, you suggested case manager and brigade surgeon. What did you expect to happen pursuant to that recommendation?
There needed to be follow-up made. I mean, these are all recommendations. You know, I wanted to do my due diligence, as I noted before, as a behavioral health officer, to make sure that I had spoken to, you know, the appropriate chain of command and made the appropriate recommendations.
Okay. Section 6 is the recommendations and comments for commanders, right?
Section 6. Say that again, sir. We're okay. Section 6.
It's the next page
Yeah.
at the top, section
Yes,
6.
yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you expect the commander to follow these recommendations?
I would assume that the commander was going to follow these recommendations. Yes.
In your experience, have you had commanders who refused to follow these recommendations?
And with my experience, no. I mean, you normally most of the in regards to recommendations regarding, you know, a soldier that's not fit for duty, that there's, you know, some underlying, you know, there's issues going on with the paranoia and the psychosis. I would assume that they would follow my recommendations.
Okay. And if the commander couldn't or wouldn't follow the recommendations, would you expect him to talk to you about why that was not going to occur?
I can't say, sir. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you made 6 recommendations. The first was that the service member, the first has to do with his understanding. You say that the service member can understand and participate in administrative proceedings and appreciate the difference between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What was that based on?
Just with the interview. I mean, you know, I noted before, you know, I did not have to go through the process of filling out paperwork, forcing the service member to go to a higher level of care. The service member was voluntarily going to go for a higher level of care and assessment.
Okay. And then in terms of the recommendations, the first one is that you recommended that the commander ensure that the service member attends and follows all follow-up appointments, right?
Yes.
And explain what you expect the commander to do in that regard.
Those were my recommendations, sir. So I was hoping that they would make sure that the soldier was going to follow up recommended treatment and care after being discharged from the hospital.
Okay. And the next block that is checked is you recommend that the commander increase the leader/supervisory support with intent of keeping service member engaged with unit members and other sources of support, correct?
Correct.
What sort of activities would you expect the commander to undertake in that regard?
Just to me, that just encourages basically making sure that the soldier is being checked on and that they're because of how the soldier presented, that they're still kind of like part of the unit. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I understand. So in terms of a reservist
Mm-hmm.
who's not on a base,
Right.
31 days a month, would you expect the commander to require the service member to attend battle assemblies, for example?
To have that, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when a service member, myself as a speaking as a reservist myself, if a soldier's not showing up for battle assembly, that's with an unexcused absence. That's definitely a red flag for sure. There's something's going on, sir.
Okay. The next block is consider placement of service member in barracks for increased support and potentially reduced access to weapons.
Right.
Now, again, as a reservist, he's not living on the base, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does that really apply to reservists?
This is a standard, this is a military form. Excuse me. So this just goes back to the fact that I mentioned this, that I instituted a behavioral health profile of no weapons, no range, for this soldier. So that's all about the safety concerns.
Okay, yeah, and it just doesn't apply as well to a reservist as it does to an active duty.
Right.
Okay. And then the next one is encourage the service member to use gun locks and gun safes or temporarily secure personal weapons with MPs, unit arms room, or other trusted source.
Correct.
And why did you recommend that?
This is all about going back to the safety, sir.
Okay.
Safety. Yeah.
And you thought that the commander had the authority to store the arms in the facility?
I basically, I knew that I did what I was supposed to do by instituting the profile, and I wanted to I made my recommendations and spoke to the commander. I mean, I don't know whether or not, let me put it this way. There was nothing where I could say yay or nay in regards to follow up, whether what I recommended occurred or not. Does that make sense? I mean,
I understand. Yeah. I'm just, in terms of, as you pointed out, this is a pre-printed form that the Army prepares.
Correct.
And it contemplates the recommendation that you've checked off here, that the commander can encourage the service member to use the unit arms room to store his firearms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you thought that the commander had the authority to do that, right?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I was all about just making sure that the soldier did not have access to weapons or munitions. That was at that moment in time. That's what I was thinking about, sir.
And the commander, he never told you that he didn't think he had the authority to do that, did he?
No, that he didn't. I was never told that by his commander, sir. No.
And the final recommendation is that the commander restrict access to or disarm all military weapons and ammunition and no range duties. You've talked about that before, right? The reason your concerns about that. Okay. And then in terms of the further comments, which is about 3/4 of the way down that page, do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Your first sentence is, this evaluation did yield information suggestive of low risk of harm to self or others. And again, we've talked about that. That was at the moment, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Service member does not meet medical retention standards from psychiatric perspective, IAWAR 40-501, due to recent reported symptoms of psychosis and paranoia. What does that mean?
That he's not fit for duty, sir.
Okay. And then you reflect that you were recommending that he go to Four Winds for a higher level of care. And then you say it is recommended that the service member's chain of command stay engaged with the service member's care, and that once discharged to the HOR,
Home of record, sir. Sorry about that in acronyms. Yeah.
That's all right. Be followed up with case management and brigade medical officer, also command and RMO initiate MEB process. What does RMO initiate MEB process?
So the also command and I believe the reserve medical officer and initiate medical board proceedings recommended. Because at that point in time, he's not fit for duty with paranoia and psychosis. So that indicates that someone would be medically boarded out of the military, sir.
Okay. And your recommendation that the chain of command stay engaged with them was important to you, correct?
Yes.
And you would expect the chain of command to be followed in this regard?
I would expect that, sir. Yes.
Would you know, he was an E7, correct? You know that?
Correct. He was a sergeant first class, sir. Yes.
Would you expect an E6 to be assigned to be the person to monitor him?
I couldn't say, sir.
Okay. But you didn't necessarily expect the commander to be dealing with him on a day-to-day basis, right? There was somebody in the chain of command. I mean, in other words, if the first sergeant...
I can't speak to that, sir. I really can't speak to that. You know, okay. I can only, you know, speak to, you know, what my recommendations were and, you know, what my assessment was at that point in time when I assessed the soldier in question, sir.
Okay. And then your final sentence is, it is also recommended that measures be taken to safely remove all firearms and weapons from service members' HOR, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Captain Reamer is identified as the command representative contacted. You spoke to him directly, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And was he at Keller when you talked to him?
He was, yes, I'd spoken to him. I spoke to him on 2 occasions. I spoke to him initially in the emergency department when I was after I had assessed the soldier. That was my initial contact. And then I spoke to him on the phone, and he actually he wasn't at Keller, but he was still at West Point because his unit was there for like 2 weeks running a range.
Was that on the same day that you spoke to him twice, or
No, different days, sir.
Okay, so the one was around July 28th?
Correct.
Okay, and let's focus on the first one at Keller.
Yeah.
About how long did that discussion last?
Not that long, because he was actually, you know, he was filling out the appropriate paperwork to have a command directed evaluation. So I just had a brief discussion with him.
What do you recall telling him?
Just basically what he needed to know, what form he needed to fill out so that the so that the 3822, which is this document that we just went through, sir, could be done.
Did you talk to him about Card's personal firearms?
No, I did not talk to him about his personal firearms at that moment in time.
Did you talk to Sergeant Mode or anybody else?
I did. I corroborated with all of there's whoever's they're in the names of the NCOs that I spoke with are in the chart, and I did corroborate with them, sir. Yes.
Okay. So you just met with Card once.
Yes, sir.
filled out your, did all the charts that you do. You filled out the report of mental status evaluation, and in your mind, was this pretty much over for you at that point?
What over what, sir? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm clear.
Was your involvement at that point?
That was it. Yeah, pretty much my job was to assess the soldier, who was brought to the ED, presenting with the paranoia and the psychosis. So that was my job, was to assess the soldier, and as I have stated, previously, that he was not fit for duty, and there was some safety concerns, and that's why I referred him to a higher level of care, sir.
Okay. Let's turn back to Exhibit 10D, which is your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And have you reviewed it today or last night?
Yes, I reviewed it, sir.
And is it accurate? Is there
Yes,
anything, any errors that you've noticed?
No, I mean, it's exactly,
and it mentions that you spoke to Sergeant Wainwright, who is one of the members of that unit,
yes, sir.
and he said that his behavior had been going on for some time, but had been getting worse in recent months, correct? And then it mentions that you talked to the service member about his reported symptoms of people talking about him and saying that he is a pedophile and homosexual. Noted this has been occurring since December 2022, when he's going to a local bar in the community and started playing cornhole 3 times per week. I mentioned that he started to date a woman who also at the time reported that she did not think that he had good hygiene and smell. Do you remember anything else he said about cornhole?
No, not off the top of my head, sir. No.
Okay. He mentioned his OUI conviction, correct?
Say that again. Oh, the DUI?
Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned that, sir. Yes.
Okay. And then he reported growing up in Bowdoin, Maine, and he had an average upbringing, reporting a supportive home life from both his mother and father, but he had 2 siblings that he was not particularly close to, correct?
That was per his report, sir. Yes.
Okay. Did you have any communication with his parents, yourself?
No, sir.
Or siblings?
No, sir.
And then finally, you said that the service member denied suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation, but reported, "I'm afraid of what I may do if people still keep bothering me about the so-called voices that I'm hearing being homosexual and a pedophile," right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. So it was a little ominous, fair to say?
What's that, sir?
Is it fair to say there was sort of ominous? That's one of the reasons why you sent him on to Four Winds?
I was concerned. The safety issues and what was going on. Yeah. With the paranoia and the psychosis were concerning to me, sir. Yes.
Okay. Let's turn to the July 28 conversation you had with Captain Reamer. That's reflected in Exhibit 10C, right?
Okay. Okay, that's the okay. Yes, sir.
It says late entry. What does that mean?
It's an addendum, sir.
Okay.
So
you spoke
I wanted to make sure that everything was in the chart.
So you talked to Captain Reamer on the morning of July 28, right?
unit on July, is it the 27th or the 28th? What somewhere in around that period of time, sir. Oh yeah,
Oh,
here we go.
I see. No, you entered
July
it,
28th. Yeah, so July 28th, sir. Yes.
you entered it on July 28th, but the first sentence is that you,
Yeah,
spoke
yes,
with
sir.
them on the
Yeah, it's
27th.
right there. Yeah,
Okay. And you review the findings on the DA 3822. That's the document we've marked as 10B, correct?
correct, sir.
So at that time, you went through it with Captain Reamer.
Correct.
And you discussed with Captain Reamer about discharge planning for the service member and having the Army Reserve Command to include medical regarding discussion to start medical board process and service member medical disposition going forward. So
Yes, sir.
to get him out of the armed services, right?
Right.
Okay. It was also discussed with Commander about making sure that steps are taken to remove weapons from service members' home to ensure safety. Commander did not have any questions or concerns about our conversation. Do you recall any more details about what you said to Captain Reamer about the guns at his house?
I just basically wanted to make sure that that was going to happen, because of, I did the profile, and I wanted to make sure that, because the SAFE Act couldn't be, done because the soldier was not a New York resident, I wanted to make sure that, that weapons that soldier did not have access to munitions or arms.
And what was his response when you told him that?
He said that he was going to take care of that. I mean, I'm I didn't get a negative response where no, I'm not going to do that. So it was it was understood, my understanding that during, our conversation that was going to happen, sir.
Okay. And then he said he hadn't been able to get the 3822
Correct.
before because his email wasn't working, but you got
Correct.
him a hard copy that day, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Now, let me ask you just briefly about Exhibit 10E.
Okay, sir.
Do you know Gina Bear?
Yeah, she's she's one of the case management nurses at Keller.
Okay. Now, did you talk to Miss Bear about her conversations with the medical providers at Four Winds?
I basically, nothing in too much detail. I know that she was tracking, the soldier because, I'd made the referral. So, I did not know anything in regards to what was happening at Four Winds or, have access to charts or any treatment that, that the soldier was receiving. I was just made aware when the soldier was going to be discharged from Four Winds.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what was your reaction when you learned about the planned discharge?
I just basically I wanted to do that's when I had that conversation with because I know that I'd instituted the profile, the behavioral health profile, and I just wanted to make sure I wanted to make sure that I was doing my due diligence and making sure that things were my recommendations were hopefully going to be executed. Hopefully, those were my intentions, sir.
Okay. In the July 28th entry, Ms. Bear states that Mr. Kelly, who is the social worker at Keller, is calling service members' command to have all firearms removed from service members' home. Were you aware of that at the time?
Whether she was going to call?
No, that she had spoken to Mike Kelly, and Mike Kelly had told her this.
Okay, let me see. Hold on a second.
I'm looking at the July 28th entry and about the third line down.
Okay, July 28th, third line. Okay, so send application court order. And yeah, it's in the chart, so I'm sure that I was made aware of this at that time. Yes.
Do you read these charts?
I do. The chart for Ms. Bear, because we were on the same team together, and so she was following up on the soldier. Yes.
Did you ever talk to Mike Kelly directly?
No.
Do you know him?
No.
Other than, okay. Then on the the August 11th entry up above that, it reports on a call that Gina Bear had with Robert Card. Do you see that?
I see that, sir. Yes.
And she spoke to him, and Card said he was fine, and that he had applied for a suppressor, a silencer for a rifle, right?
That was that's what's in the chart. Yes, sir.
And had to complete a questionnaire today, and he was denied due to the fact that he had answered that he had been at a behavioral health facility, right?
Yes, sir.
And then he talks still about having to kick somebody's ass if they talk about his, talked about him in a derogatory way, right? Or what?
That's what's in the chart, sir. Yes.
Okay. And then he said that he had no follow-up care since he was discharged and stopped taking his medications because he did not like how they made him feel. Do you know if anybody at Keller or Four Winds told the Army Reserve that he had stopped taking his meds?
I was not aware of that, sir. I mean, I was only aware with some of the care that Miss Bear had provided with the case management, and then also my recommendations and my assessment when I saw him in the emergency department, sir.
Okay. And give me just one moment.
Yes, sir. No worries.
Are you aware that Dr. Klagsbrunn from Four Winds left left a message or spoke to Dr. Sanchez of West Point to notify about the discharge action that was going on?
Well, I knew he was. That's when I knew that the soldier was being discharged. Yes, I found that out. Yes.
Okay. And at that point, Keller did what it could do to invoke the SAFE Act, right?
Yes. Well, we made sure that that was with my recommendations, making with the profile that was in place, and then speaking to his commander, Captain Reamer, and recommending that firearms be removed from the soldier's home.
Okay. Major, did you have any email correspondence with Captain Reamer?
Did I have email correspondence? The only correspondence with Captain Reamer was the form, I believe the form that he filled out to have the command directive completed. He'd emailed me.
Do you recall any other emails with any other personnel?
No other correspondence, sir.
Or texts?
No.
Okay. How did you learn of the shooting?
How did I learn of the shooting?
Yeah.
Just through actually, I learned of the shooting through media, believe it or not, on the news.
Did you recognize the name or?
At the time, no, I did not until, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it was, yeah, it kind of hit me after the fact.
Sure. Did you talk to Army investigators?
Did I talk to Army investigators? Elaborate more on that. I talked with the team at Keller.
Yeah, but
You
I
know,
mean, are you aware that the Army is conducting an investigation?
right. I did speak with Army investigators, sir. Yes.
How many times?
Just once, sir.
Okay. How long ago?
It was in October, sir.
Okay. And were others at Keller interviewed as well by the investigators?
My understanding, yes.
Okay. Major, thank you very much. I have nothing further at this time.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Are there other questions?
There are others.
I have some, Chair. Major Dickson, I'd like to focus on the interplay between your evaluation and that of Four Winds. So I've understood you to say that the recommendations that you've just gone over with Mr. Dilworth were based on your 45 to 60-minute meeting with Mr. Card. Is that correct?
Correct, ma'am.
And you then determined that he was in need of further evaluation and he was referred to Four Winds.
Correct, ma'am.
And that's a civilian facility?
Yes, ma'am.
And we know through documents we've reviewed that his, at least part of, if not all of his medical records, including an evaluation that was done at Four Winds, went back to Keller. Did you ever review any of those documents?
No, ma'am. I never saw any of those documents.
So you have no idea what the evaluation that was done by the Four Winds providers determined was Mr. Card's status?
I never saw any of that information. The first time that I saw any of the chart, you know, any of the assessment and recommendations, including discharge summary, the first time I saw that was when this was provided for me right before meeting with this commission.
So if their evaluation was not consistent with the findings of your evaluation, would that not change your recommendations?
I can't say, ma'am. The only thing I can say is, you know, what I did during the time that I saw the soldier when I was with him.
But following his 2-week stay at Four Winds, subsequent to your 45 to 60 minutes with him, isn't it possible that their findings, their evaluation would impact, if not negate, the recommendations that you had made before his commitment there or his admission there?
His going there for assessment. I mean, I can't really speak on that, ma'am. No.
But in any event, you never reviewed any of those findings.
No.
And your recommendations, as you said, were based on that moment in time that
Correct.
you saw. Okay, thank you, Major.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Anyone else have questions?
Yes,
I do. As do I. Sorry, Ellen, do you want to go before me?
Go ahead.
Okay, so hi, I'm Debbie Bader. I'm a clinical psychologist, retired. So I want to talk about your conversation, your second conversation with Captain Reamer. I understand you to have testified that you reviewed your recommendations with him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you also review your diagnostic impressions with him?
Not, I mean, necessarily didn't go through the diagnostic impressions or whatever, but I mean, yeah, because of how he was presenting with the paranoia and the auditory and the psychosis.
But at the time you saw him, Major, you considered him to be suffering from significant symptoms of mental illness.
Yes.
Right. Is it your impression that Captain Reamer understood that you considered him at the time you saw Mr. Card to be suffering from significant symptoms of mental illness?
Yes.
Okay. And sort of just diverging from that for just a minute, sort of, given in your clinical experience, if someone with significant symptoms of major mental illness, such as psychosis and paranoia, did not participate in follow-up care after a hospitalization, what level of concern might you have about that?
I would have significant concern. Yes.
Okay. During your conversation with Captain Reamer, do you think that he understood your concerns regarding Mr. Card?
Yes. I mean, this is per our conversation, my recommendations, and the fact that, the soldier was put on a no weapons, no range profile, and, presenting with paranoia and psychosis was I was concerned.
And you feel like you communicated that effectively to Captain Reamer?
I do, ma'am.
And so I know that, for example, once you read Ms. Baer's notes that he really wasn't participating in any, had stopped his medications, wasn't participating in any aftercare, that at the time that you became aware of that, you had no further conversations with Captain Reamer. Is that correct?
I didn't have any fun. No, the only conversation, like, it's what happened and what was in the chart were the conversations that I had with Captain Reamer. Yes.
And so, but understanding that he wasn't participating in any aftercare, that just, or a patient like Mr. Card, you would have been very concerned about that.
I'm sure. Yes.
Okay. And was it your expectation, based on your second conversation with Captain Reamer, that he had a sincere, he indicated sincerely that he would follow those recommendations to the best of his ability?
That was my understanding. I mean, nothing was stated to me. Oh, I can't do that. That's going to be an issue. Nothing like that was conveyed to me.
Okay. Would it have been unreasonable in your mind for anyone to underplay for Mr. Card's symptoms, to sort of,
I mean, like I said, my job at the time when I saw the soldier was basically to do an initial assessment, and it's because there were safety concerns.
Right.
And I did that to the best of my ability. And I went a little even further because I wanted to make sure, that things were going to be carried out, by his chain of command, because of the fact of the SAFE Act in New York State versus that of Maine. So, yeah.
So that additional step was that sort of unusual?
For what? What additional?
That additional step of really kind of following up with his chain of command, or is that?
I don't think it was no. It was just me basically doing what I should do as a behavioral health officer and making sure that was recommended.
Okay. And
Yes,
you
ma'am.
felt, again, I'm sorry to beat a dead horse here.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm almost done. And but you feel like that was well understood by
Yes, I did. My conversation with Captain, there was nothing where he seemed like he was confused or didn't understand. I mean, I kind of got the impression, just, yes, that's going to happen. We're going to take care of that.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Ms. Gorman?
Major Dickinson. Good morning.
Yes,
good
ma'am.
evening. I want to take you back to Exhibit 10B, which is the command directive form that you filled out. And you indicated on that the behavioral risk for harm to self or harm to others was low. There is another box option of not elevated. In your mind, what's the distinction between not elevated and low?
Not elevated and low. I can't really say. I mean, basically the fact that there was some concerns in regards to how he was presenting to me, but per self-report that he's not a harm to himself or others. You know, that's at that moment in time, that's what I went on. Not elevated, I guess you could say, would be if I'm assessing somebody and they're reporting to me no self-harm to others or themselves, and there's nothing else going on, that there's no paranoia or or auditory hallucinations, psychosis going on.
So the fact that you chose low rather than not elevated means that you saw some risk, but not enough to check intermediate or high.
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Correct.
And on a couple of occasions now, you have said that you put a profile on him or put him in profile.
Yes, ma'am.
Once that profile is on him, how does that get lifted? What's the process for that?
I believe the profile, I think it's like 90 days, something like that. I think it's like a 90-day profile. I'm just going off the top of my head. And then usually the profile, I believe, has to be if it needs to be put back in, it has to be, somebody has to put the profile back in. It doesn't automatically like just stay forever. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it automatically ends at the 90-day mark?
I believe so. I believe it was like a 90-day profile, ma'am.
Okay. And you've also indicated that you said that he was not fit for duty.
Correct.
In order for that limitation on him to be lifted, would he have had to go through the medical board process?
For him to, well, so what are you saying? I want to make sure I'm clear.
So
on this.
you indicated that on the first form for the command directive that he was not fit for duty at that
Correct.
time.
Yes.
How could he be determined fit for duty after that?
He would have to be, he would have, that's why I sent him for further assessment.
Okay.
That's why I referred him out.
Was there anything that happened at Four Winds that could have had him declared fit for duty, or would he have had to be seen?
I can't really.
Wait, let me finish.
Yeah. Sorry, ma'am.
Did he need to be seen by a physician or a nurse practitioner associated with the military in order for that to be lifted?
For the lifted. So are you talking about
could a non-military physician or nurse practitioner determine that he was fit for duty?
I believe, well, usually that's a good question. I really don't know off the top of my head, and I'm not going to speculate on this. So obviously I would say that it could be a non-military person, as long as a person had a particular credential and that was their job description, that they could do that.
Okay, so you don't really know how it happens.
For in regards to like whether he's fit for duty or.
Well, so one of the things that happened after he left New York was that he never again showed up for a battle assembly.
Okay.
Having been deemed not fit for duty, could he have shown up for a battle assembly and actually participated?
Yes, he could have. Okay, so he would, like, it's kind of like what I wrote, to be part of his unit. My profile that I instituted for him limited him to, let's say his battle assembly was going to the range to fire weapons and qualify. He would not be able to participate in that activity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Exactly. Okay.
But if the battle assembly was something having nothing to do with weapons,
right,
he would have been fit for that kind of duty?
I really couldn't say. I mean, the reason why I said what I said in regards
Major
to him being
Dickinson,
fit for
Major
duty was,
Dickinson, Major Dickinson.
yeah,
Ms.
yes.
Foreman, may I just have a moment to just confer? I think I can clarify some of your questions just with the few moments here with Major Dickinson. I understand what you're asking. Would you mind if I just clarified with him?
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr.
It's going to be
Richardson,
off camera.
okay.
Mr. Richardson, could you just identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Bradley Richardson. I'm an attorney with the Defense Health Agency, which manages healthcare for the entire Department of Defense. And I'm also an Air Force judge advocate. So just
Can they be moved to a breakout room, Kevin?
we have our own room here, so we'll go off in our own room.
Oh, you're
Okay.
Thank you very
I
much.
didn't realize you were together.
Once again, I'm causing problems, apparently.
And I will have some questions after Ellen, Judge Watson.
Okay,
I don't know how to do the hand logo, though. I'm sure it's somewhere on my screen.
you'll be recognized next.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so yeah, so just to clarify, so no, regarding, so four winds cannot stop, they cannot stop a profile or stop a medical board process if that has been started on a soldier. Just want to clarify that.
So what was your understanding of the next step in the trajectory for Mr. Card with regard
Well,
to?
my next step was for him to have him assessed further.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you surprised that he was released after a little more than 2 weeks, given the level of paranoia that you saw in him?
For me personally, yeah, sure. I was a little surprised. I'm not, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Those are all the questions
No,
that I have.
you're welcome.
Mr. Rushlaw?
Yeah, Major Dickinson, first of all, when you were involved in this assessment of Robert Card, you were a captain, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you've since been promoted to major, and I congratulate you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
And as far as your assessment of him, in which you indicated that there was a low risk of violence to others, Exhibit 10D Delta, which are your notes about your inquiry. You were told that he had a verbal altercation with another service member the night before. Is that right?
That's in the chart with one of the members of his unit.
So Exhibit 10D, D is in Delta,
Yes,
and it's
sir.
about 6th or 7th line down, I think. Fourth line. After a verbal altercation occurred yesterday with his bunkmate, Sergeant Reed. That's what you were told by one of the other.
Yeah.
If you'd been told that, in fact, this verbal altercation involved Robert Card clenching his fists, trying to go after Sergeant Reed to strike him, but he was prevented from doing so, would that still sound like a verbal altercation?
I didn't, no, so it doesn't sound like a verbal altercation. I'm just going by what was reported to me, sir. But, you know, that does not, if there was fist clenching and
so
any kind of a physical, something physical, yeah, that's a little different. Yes, sir.
And if that had been accurately reported to you as this fist clenched going after a fellow service member, would that have raised the risk level from low to intermediate or even higher?
Depending upon the situation. I mean, that's a possibility. That's a possibility.
And I know you didn't necessarily follow the events in the succeeding weeks, but on about September 12th or so, he actually struck one of his fellow service members while driving a car at a reckless rate of speed. And again, it was in the context of saying people were talking about him, accusing him of pedophilia, and his friend, fellow service member saying they're not doing this. And with that level of violence exhibited by somebody you were assessing be a higher than low risk?
I'm sorry, this is Brad Richardson again. That's outside of the scope of what he's authorized to testify. He cannot provide a expert medical opinion on facts that were unknown to him at the time. That's expressly spelled out in our authorization letter. Thank you.
All right, I understand that. Thank you. So, getting back to his agreement to go to Four Winds. So he was a voluntary patient at Four Winds.
That's correct, sir.
Which means he could have walked out anytime he wished.
Yeah, he could. Yeah, he did not. There was nothing other than my recommendation. Yeah, he was not committed to Four Winds. No.
But even though he was a voluntary patient, Four Winds still communicated regularly with Nurse Bear and made sure that she was kept up to date on his course of treatment. Is that right?
That's correct.
So it's sort of a different situation for somebody who's just a regular voluntary patient where nobody gets, except maybe their designated representative, gets to find out about the care. In this case, the military gets notified about his care, correct?
Okay, so so you're saying this is a unique situation? Is that what you're saying, sir?
Well, it's really more a question. Isn't that unusual that a voluntary patient in a mental hospital, the hospital communicates with an outside agency about their care?
So my understanding that because the soldier came through Keller, okay, and saw me for their initial assessment and was referred for a higher level of care for assessment, that there would be, some follow. The case management would be that was part of the protocol. The case management would follow the client while they were at the facility.
Okay. And according to the exhibit you've already been asked about, which are Nurse Bear's notes, I think that's Exhibit 10E, as in Edward.
Yes, sir.
Fairwinds actually told her that they were planning to do a uh, an involuntary commitment through court. Isn't that right?
That's what's in the chart. Yes.
And this is after he'd been there for about 11 days.
That's my understanding per her notes and what's in the chart, sir. Yes.
And that indicates that whatever evaluation and treatment was going on was not proving particularly successful. Isn't that how you would assess that?
I mean, I would interpret it that way, sir. Yes.
But somehow or other, within a matter of a few days after that, he was discharged.
And I saw that too as well, sir. Yes.
And do you have any idea from your personal knowledge why they made that change of course?
I can't say, sir. No.
All right. Thank you, Major.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
and you have questions?
I do, just a few. Good evening, Major.
Sure.
A couple quick questions, just so the record's very clear. Did you yourself ever file any paperwork under the New York SAFE Act?
No.
The state of New York, no. Did you see any SAFE Act paperwork filed by any other physicians or treating professionals at Keller in this matter?
No.
Were you aware that you've made reference to the fact that he wasn't a resident of New York a couple times in reference to the SAFE Act provisions? How did you become aware, or how did you reach the conclusion that a SAFE Act form could not have been filed because he wasn't a resident of New York?
Because I actually went to the website for the SAFE Act for the state of New York, and I was trying to do this, and when I ran into, I basically couldn't do it because he wasn't a resident of New York.
All right.
So that's when I made sure that the profile was in place, and then reaching out to his chain of command. Yeah.
And were you aware that the New York Division of Criminal Justice Services had put out training materials that said non-residents could be subject to a New York SAFE Act report?
I wasn't aware of that, ma'am.
Thank you. All set.
Nothing further. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Major. We appreciate your cooperation. You have a full day ahead of you.
And it's
I do,
now
sir.
7:30 in the morning your time. Is that about right?
Yeah, about 7:30, 7:37. Yeah.
Okay,
Have a good rest of the day.
right.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
I will entertain a
you.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes, and we will stand adjourned, and we may leave the Zoom at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night, everyone.